Hello everyone. Today is 6th of September. Now it's 15 past 11 in the morning Moscow time, and this is first news update for the day, which will be initially published on my Patreon and Boosty pages, and later on in few hours on my YouTube and Rumble channels. So, dear friends, if you want to support my work, please consider to join our Patreon and Boosty communities. Links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And of course, you will have early access to these first updates. I have prepared quite a number of news difference for you for this segment, and hopefully you will find it informative and useful. And if so, please like the video and leave some commentary. This might help to deal with the algorithm, and maybe video will reach wider audience despite the shadow ban. It might happen. Anyways, without any delay, let's start with the news segment. And first report traditionally is about work of Russian air defense systems past night. During the previous days, I was reporting about relatively low activity of the Kiev regime and its NATO backers in terms of these long-range strikes deep into Russian territory. And my reading on the picture was that probably NATO and their proxy regime in Kiev are stockpiling drones, and I guess that was exactly the case, because last night hundreds of drones were launched by enemies to strike deep into Russian territory, and at least 251 of these drones were intercepted by Russian air defense systems, according to RIA Novosti, and this information is based on Defense Ministry's latest update. So let me give you some details, dear friends, on that. Air defense forces destroyed 251 Ukrainian drones over Russian territory overnight, Defense Ministry reported. 62 drones were intercepted over the Black Sea, 40 drones over the Crimea, 34 drones over the Kursk region, 30 over the Belgorod region, 20 over the Nizhny Novgorod region, 17 over Voronezh region, 11 over Krasnodar region, 8 each over the Bryansk and Tula regions, 5 over the waters of the Azov Sea, 4 over the Ryazan region, 2 each over the Vladimir, Ivanovo, Kaluga, Tambov, and Oryol regions. So unfortunately, quite a larger scale of attack, and the geography itself is quite vaster. You can tell by these reports. 251 drones were intercepted. Maybe some drones did manage to bypass air defense systems and hit certain areas deep inside Russia. Unfortunately, this morning, several sources reported about casualties as a result of among civilians as a result of a night strike by NATO and the Kiev regime. Information is preliminary, but during the day, probably we will learn some more about it. And during the second or main news update this evening, during the live stream at 10 p.m. Moscow time, I will share additional information that will be available about this, of course. But attack was clearly quite a larger scale, maybe largest ever attack by NATO and the Kiev regime since the beginning of special military operation. And we also have this report, dear friends, from TASS news agency, that there was a blackout in the Belgorod region as a result of attacks by Kiev regime and their NATO backers, and local authorities are saying that it will take approximately 24 hours to eliminate the consequences of the Ukrainian armed forces attack to restore the energy supply to the people. Let me give you some details on that. So power supply following attack by Ukrainian armed forces in the Belgorod region will be fully restored in at least 24 hours. Deputy Governor for the Housing and the Public Utilities, Sergei Dogalyuk, announced this as at the regional government meetings. So unfortunately, locals in the Belgorod region still are experiencing issues with the electricity supply, but authorities are promising that in 24 hours situation will be resolved. And this is happening, dear friends, while Zelensky, as I reported yesterday during the live stream, is kind of hinting on a ceasefire, or asking even for a ceasefire in terms of these long-range strikes. So you tell me how anyone can trust Zelensky, by the way. he is asking for a ceasefire in terms of these long-range strikes. And then in few hours, Kiev regime and its NATO backers are launching hundreds of drones to strike deep into Russian territory. Of course, these criminals cannot be trusted ever, by the way. Of course, Moscow will ignore this initiative of Zelensky, but let me give you details on that in case you have not watched yesterday's update of mine. So following numerous explosions in Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky abruptly changed his position and asked for a ceasefire in the skies. A neutral or unilateral ceasefire in the skies is possible, he wrote on his Telegram channel. Zelensky did not clarify what he meant by a unilateral ceasefire in the skies. However, the publication Strana, this is a propaganda outlet of Kiev regime, notes that his very announcement of an air truce represents a radical shift in the position. The publication suggests that Zelensky's abrupt change in a position may be related to Ukraine's significant problems with air defense. Politicians, experts, and journalists have recently been actively discussing the hole in Ukraine's air defense system. Ukrainian armed forces are experiencing a shortage of missiles for Western air defense systems, as Strana notes. This could have serious negative consequences for Ukraine ahead of onset of a cold weather. Excuse me, but yet again, dear friends, after making this announcement about truce in the skies, Kiev regime, with the assistance of NATO, launched hundreds of drones to strike deep into Russian territory. So obviously, Moscow cannot take this personality seriously or his NATO backers. So therefore, I really doubt that there going to be any halt in Russian long-range strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime. We will find out in upcoming days. Meanwhile, dear friends, I did mention reports about progress of the Russian forces during yesterday's update on line of contact, but nevertheless, I think it's worth to repeat that the Russian army liberated Kuzminovka settlement in DPR, and also, according to TASS News Agency's report, which is based on a statement of Igor Kimakovsky, advisor to head of DPR, Russian troops have virtually driven their Ukrainian armed forces groups out of village of Chunoshino, southeast of Krasnoarmeysk, which is Pokrovsk, dear friends. And let me show you on the map location of these settlements. So this is Pokrovsk Mirnograd agglomeration, and this is Chunishino village. Relatively small village. Just if we zoom in, it's like 2-3 dozen of buildings in a whole village. But nevertheless, at this point, of course, this area has strategical meaning because it's a location. And as you can see, dear friends, it's located right on the outskirts of Pokrovsk on the southeastern side. And when it comes to Pokrovsk itself, Russian armed forces already are conducting operations inside the city. And there is a fights, street by street fights, basically, and Russian troops are in control of certain areas in the central part of Pokrovsk and western parts of Pokrovsk. Russian militaries are actively operating on outskirts of Mirnograd settlement 2, Mirnograd Town 2, and Russian DRGs basically are operating inside Mirnograd for quite a while now. And when it comes to the second settlement, Kuzminovka, this settlement located on the southern side of Seversk city. Significant progress of the Russian armed forces in this direction. Already reports are coming in about activity of the Russian DRGs in Zvanovka and Svyatopokrovsk areas. And once these two settlements will be liberated, it will take maybe a week or two. Then most likely we can say that grouping of forces of Kiev regime in Seversk is in complete encirclement right now. Kiev regime's garnison in Seversk is in sort of operational encirclement, but they still have opportunity to receive some reinforcements from some resupplies, right? But once Russian troops will establish full control over the Zvanovka and Svyatopokrovsk, it's going to be full encirclement of Kiev regime's garnison there. I remind you, dear friends, that earlier there was reports that after clearing operation was finalized in Swatovo Forestry, this massive forest, by the way, on northern side of Seversk. Russian troops moved forward towards Yampol and Dronovka settlements, and Russian troops already are conducting operations inside the Yampol and around the Dronovka settlements. Once both these two villages are under Russian control, we can say that Seversk garrison of Kiev regime will lose any opportunity whatsoever to receive any reinforcement or resupply. And these two settlements, of course, located between Seversk and Liman, major strongholds of Kiev regime in this direction, right before Seversk-Kramatorsk agglomeration, which is the last stronghold that Kiev regime has in the DPR, last stronghold that was prepared since 2014, basically. So I think before end of this year, we will see Russian troops beginning operation in Seversk-Kramatorsk direction also. Yet again, I'm no military expert. My prediction should be taken with a pinch of salt, but based on developments on a line of contact, I think I'm not really far off their objective reality on the ground. And before end of this year, most likely we will see battles begun for Slavyansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. And when it comes to Kramatorsk, dear friends, one might argue that battle for this city, partially on a distance at least, has already begun, because yesterday videos surfaced on internet when Russian fiber optic drone was flying in the central part of Kramatorsk looking for a military target. Then operator of this drone spotted the military target and striked. It was a military pickup truck. I have a video of that, dear friends, and let's see it. So it is quite interesting development, I can say. This is central parts of Kramatorsk we are seeing right now. Quality of picture is great, which indicates that this is a fiber optic guided drone. And so operator is searching for a military target. And at one point, this military target was spotted. You can see pickup truck with a camouflage and then strike. And it's not about this pickup truck, it's about fact itself that Russian troops now are operating with the drones inside the Kramatorsk itself, fiber optic drones, and that means Russian troops, DRGs maybe, or maybe even regular formations are about 10, 20 kilometers away from this city. Let's continue with some other news, dear friends. And when it comes to Kramatorsk, I can show you on the map, dear friends, where this. So this is Kramatorsk town, big town, by the way, clearly one of the biggest towns in the DPR for sure. And this is approximately the area that Russian drone was spotted. Not necessarily, most central part of the city, but it's there, right? So significant development, I will say. Russian DRGs or maybe even regular troops are very close to Slavyansk and Kramatorsk if they are already operating with the FPV drones to hit the targets there. So probably in upcoming days and weeks we will see more such videos emerge on internet. And when it comes to Russian long-range strikes, dear friends, also we had reports about destruction of the bridge across the Seversky Donets river near the Rigorodka Liman direction by Russian aerospace forces that dropped basically FAP 3000 glide bomb. And let me show you a video of this operation. Two Russian engineers clearly are improving precision of these glide kits that are used on the bombs, right, including FAB 3000, and this strike was precise. I can show you a video, dear friends, on that. So It's right on the bridge, and there are section of the bridge, sections actually of the bridge collapsed straight away. Let's see it once again. Yeah, I mean, clearly a very significant improvement when it comes to these glide kits that are used on aerial bombs, right? Recently, I did saw video, dear friends. Russian, I guess, Su-34 was bombing enemy positions in certain forestry on the line of contact, and I guess 4 glide bombs, Fab 500s, were dropped, and every single bomb landed in a forestry line. Every single one, right? And I spotted straight away. First thought was, well, I mean, this is significant improvement in the precision of these glide bombs, glide kits, and it is definitely the case. Anyways, dear friends, let's continue with some more news. And RIA Novosti reported this morning that Rostec delivered a new batch of Su-34 frontline bombers to Ministry of Defense. So United Aircraft Corporation, as a part of a state defense order, has manufactured and delivered a new batch of Su-34 fighter bombers to the Ministry of Defense. No specifics how many exactly new planes were transferred to Ministry of Defense, but because talk is about batch, that means it's at least several, at least 2 or 3, maybe more Su-34s, new Su-34s were transferred to Defense Ministry. Of course, these bombers, these fighter bombers, proved themselves to be very effective, and not surprisingly, there is a quite high demand on these planes when it comes to export. And I already have seen several pictures of Su-34s undergoing factory testings in a desert camouflage, by the way. And rumors are circulating that soon Algeria might get Russian Su-34s, deliveries of Russian Su-34 fighter bombers. And I remind you, dear friends, that when it comes to Russian aircraft exports or military aircraft exports, it is also Algeria that is considered to be first buyer of Russian Su-57 5th-gen fighter jets. So I think this is also something to keep in mind. And dear friends, before I continue, let me remind you that this media project is completely subscriber funded. And if you like my work, if you want to support, you can do it through several means. You can donate to this channel, to this project, or through PayPal platform or Boosty platform. Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon page or page that I have on Boosty, where there is extra content on regular basis, including these news updates, by the way, that are published first on my Patreon and Boosty. So if you become a Patreon of the project, then you will have early access. And also, there is a crypto option in case you are good with it. And during the live streams, dear friends, and live streams are about 10 p.m. Moscow time, evening, from Monday to Thursday. During the live streams, you can use, of course, Super Chat or Round feature on Rumble, or become a premium subscriber on Rumble, where my channel is monetized. Hopefully, you will have time to join live stream this evening at 10 p.m. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And many thanks to everybody who supported and continues to support my work and keeps me in this field of news and political commentary. Thank you very much. That being said, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. And next is, well, very interesting news. You know, dear friends, there is still hysteria all around NATO countries about drones that are interfering in the work of airports and so on. It began in Poland. It was a false flag operation, obviously, and these false flag operations are not stopping, by the way. Then was Denmark, Norway, some other countries, right? Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. They are government of those Baltic Chihuahuas. states are, or quasi-states are also whining about. And well, quite interesting news is coming from these Baltic Chihuahuas, by the way. Allegedly, Russian army inflatables that shot Lithuania airport turned out to be cigarette smugglers with helium balloons. There was a hysteria, by the way, hysteria in Lithuania, just like during the previous 24 hours, about alleged Russian drones, right? And as a result of some investigation, it has become known that smugglers, smugglers, by the way, were using these balloons to smuggle cigarettes. You know, I guess cigarettes here in Russia are cheaper significantly than in Lithuania, and these weather balloons sort of were used there to smuggle these cigarettes. 18,000 packs actually of cigarettes were recovered, and of course, by the way, of course, RT that shared this news is ironizing here that deep state can twist this to an Article 5 event anyhow. Surely, isn't it? And yes, maybe, by the way, but that's what is happening. Drones are in hands of so many people nowadays, right? Even though I think mostly all these drone stories all over other European states is the false flag operations of the local secret services to further intensify pressure on the local communities to increase fear, right, of Russia, because that allows elites, by the way, to manipulate with the funds without being challenged, right? But in many cases, if majority is a false flag operation of these stories with the drones, at least some of those stories definitely are some either smugglers, like in case of Lithuania, or maybe some private citizens are just doing some crazy stuff, right, with the drones and interfering with the work of airports and adding to overall hysteria, right? There are many weird people, by the way. You know, there are so many individuals that are using lasers, for example, to target planes, right? And this is becoming bigger and bigger issue. Why are they doing this kind of stuff? I don't know. It's insane, but there are many insane people in this world, right? In Europe included. And some might use their drones to interfere in the work of airports, and maybe they will have a laugh about it, although I guess they are too stupid to realize that they are endangering lives of hundreds of people with their actions, with their drone operation, right? But anyways, I think this is quite funny news, by the way, that worth our attention, that Lithuania was hysterical. Lithuanian authorities were hysterical past 24 hours, and eventually it turned out that some smugglers were using balloons, by the way, to bring some cigarettes into this EU and NATO member state, and that's all. But yet again, I mean, deep state globalists they might twist this story as a Article 5 event. You never know with them, you know. Also, dear friends, when it comes to this Western hostility towards Russia, we have this report that Poland kills visas of Russian officials on the last day before OSCE conference in Warsaw. OSCE is, of course, organization of cooperation and security and cooperation in Europe. Conference should take place in Warsaw, and the last day, Polish authorities cut Russian visas to Russian delegation, Russian diplomats. This information is coming from Russian Public Institute of Electoral Laws. Electoral law information originally was published by RBK news agency, and okay, I mean, what we can say about this? Only question I have, why Russia is wasting time, or Russian officials are wasting time on OSCE, first of all. Russian president just recently, during his speech and subsequent Q&A, did spoke about this organization and stated basically that OSCE has become a tool in hands of hostile groups in the West, right? And no longer serves as an institution to resolve some security issues in Europe. It's a tool, right, that are weaponized, that are used against Russia, for example, and many former Soviet republics. So if Russian president is saying this, then why on earth taxpayers' money being spent to send a delegation in this conference in the first place? What is the point? I don't know. I really don't get it, man. There is so many these so-called international organizations that in reality are tools in hands of Russian enemies that, you might get tired counting them, right? And in many cases, Russia is still part of these organizations, which makes no sense whatsoever, right? Including OSCE. And I don't know, man, what has have to happen this to change. Russian president spoke about this. So, I mean, does he have to give order directly to foreign ministry, to government, to get out of these so-called international organizations like OSCE, WTO, International Atomic Energy Agency, and many, many others? None of them are actually international organizations. All of them are weaponized institutions in hands of our enemies. It's just factual, right? Why we are wasting time and money on these so-called organizations, man? I don't know. So maybe eventually, when Russian delegations will be blocked by these Western countries or countries from anti-Russian coalition, including Poland, once Russian delegations will be blocked to ever enter the territory of these countries, maybe then Moscow will say, I mean, we are withdrawing now from this organization. Maybe Russian leadership is waiting for that moment. I don't know. But it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So much stuff is happening that makes no sense literally whatsoever. OSCE, really, what we lost in that so-called organization, man. What our delegation gonna discuss there? And who gonna listen to Russians? Who gonna listen to Russian delegation? No one, right? But to send a delegation, to arrange hotels and this and that, it costs freaking money, right? Money that can be spent on something much more useful for society. Anyways, dear friends, France continues to down spiral towards the very dark place. And we have this report this morning that French PM, Prime Minister, quits after only 27 days in office. Sébastien Lecornu is shortest serving prime minister in the nation's history. So yes, something is going on in France, by the way, something not good. But instead of leaving office and green lighting new elections, parliamentary elections, presidential elections, Macron is trying hard to stay in power, right? Even though he has no support whatsoever, his government has no support whatsoever. And France is becoming a joke itself, right? In just last few years, this is fifth prime minister, right? If I remember correctly, that is stepping down. The world is watching and laughing. What the hell, man? Anyways, French people probably will sort it out. I don't know. Meanwhile, Trump reacted finally on a proposal of the Russian president about New START treaty, and he said that initiative of Russian president sounds like a good idea. As you know, dear friends, Russia offered a 1-year extension of an agreement after it will end this year, this or next year, basically. And of course, it will be good if it will be gooder if two major nuclear powerhouses will, on first stage, extend this agreement for a year, and then maybe some work will be done on strategical nuclear forces or nuclear forces in general, right? To come up with some new agreement, which will probably make this world little more safer. Maybe. Meanwhile, dear friends, there was a massive crowds that filled the streets of Rome protesting the war in Gaza. Demonstrators accused the US and Israel of ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and they accuse Israel of genocide. And it's not just them, by the way. And I can show you some video that is circulating on internet right now. A really massive demonstration, by the way. I mean, sea of people are participating in this protest. According to some reports, million people participates in these protests. I mean, you can see on your screen right now lot of people. Streets and squares are packed with hundreds of thousands of people for sure, right? And it's not just Rome, dear friends. I have seen videos about protests against actions of the US and Israel against Palestinians in Serbia, in other European countries too. I mean, it's a regular occurrence. Maybe not on this scale when hundreds of thousands of people are participating, but nevertheless, there are actions in Europe in support of Palestinian people. That's for sure. And when it comes to Middle East, and the developments there, as you know, dear friends, a couple of days ago, Trump came up with this 20-point peace plan, which was accepted by Israeli side and Hamas. And we have reports that today, on October 6th, negotiations between Israel and Hamas will take place in Egypt. Let's see what kind of results these negotiations will bring. It is possible, at least on theoretical level, that sides will agree on release of a significant number of hostages. I remind you, dear friends, that Hamas still has several dozen hostages, Israeli hostages, and Israel has thousands of Palestinian hostages, right? So maybe today, later on, we will learn about some agreement that was reached between Israeli delegation and the delegation of Hamas. Also, we have this report that Hamas agrees to disarm, according to Al Arabiya media outlet, willing to hand over weapons to Palestinian Egyptian Authority under international supervision. Organization says it received US guarantees via Qatar for a permanent Israeli withdrawal from Gaza Strip. So yet again, Hamas demonstrates willingness to de-escalate, clearly. But I'm not sure, dear friends, that all this 20-point initiative, peace plan of Trump is truly about de-escalation. I think this is all this topic of 20-point plan, peace plan of White House, Israeli statements in regards to it. I think all of it is a deception operation, and soon Israeli Secret Services will come up with a terrorist attack or something. They will do something to then say that, well, Hamas cannot be trusted, negotiations cannot continue, and Israel will begin bombing and destroying whatever is left in the Gaza Strip, and probably will go ahead with their occupation of the West Bank. Also, I don't believe even for a second that White House was genuine when Trump announced this peace plan, and I don't think Israel was genuine, Israel leadership, when they said that they will agree on the escalation. They cannot be trusted, and we have numerous reasons to to have this position that neither Israel leadership, neither US leadership can be trusted ever, period, right? Most likely, this is all part of deception operation, maybe to somewhat minimize pressure on Israel on one side, right? Because allegedly, even U.S. president during the conversation with Netanyahu says that Israel has lost her international support due to actions in the Gaza Strip, which is factually accurate. If Israel leadership even cares, by the way, I doubt they do. But on one hand, yes, this might be attempt to decrease the pressure on Israel. But on the other hand, probably this is also attempt to give Israeli side a little break and to divert attention of the public world community from Middle East in general to specifically Gaza topic. And while this is happening, US and Israel might launch next new wave of attacks on Iran, by the way, in attempt to provoke a regional war in the Middle East. And on this topic, Zionists, American neocons, and European globalists are on the same page. They, for different reasons, maybe, but they all want a regional war to happen in the Middle East. The globalists want and neocons want this to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf and cut off China and global South in general from Middle Eastern energy sources. And the Israeli leadership wants this to weaken as much as possible all the regional countries. That's what Israel was engaged in for decades and decades and decades, and were using US as its enforcer in the region for also decades, right? So I think something dodgy is happening, by the way, something dodgy is happening. And on this very topic, we have this report that I mentioned yesterday also during the live stream that US Navy's aircraft carrier USS Gerald Ford has arrived in Western Mediterranean. And I guess soon this aircraft carrier will be in a position to take attacks potentially on Iran if order comes. Just saying, otherwise, why US needs aircraft carrier in Mediterranean anyways? I mean, you tell me, for what exactly purposes? Right? So something dodgy is going on, by the way. Something dodgy is going on. And, well, when it comes to possible escalation with Iran, Trump himself, by the way, stated during his speech yesterday, he was talking to sailors, US Navy staff. He stated that we are not going to wait so long to hit Iran again. And he was saying this in regards to Iran's nuclear program. He said that if Iran will continue work on nuclear program, we will strike them again. And he claimed that Iran was a month away to build a nuclear bomb, which is a lie, by the way. Trump is lying a lot, right? Does he ever say the truth? I mean, really, does he ever tells the truth? 90% at least, 90% of everything he says probably is a lie, right? And there are only occasionally some factually accurate stuff. He claimed that Iran had was months away from nukes, and he also said if Iran will continue to work on nukes, so we will not wait long, we will strike. And based on irresponsible behavior of the White House, they might come up with a statement tomorrow and say that, you know what, the intelligence tell them that Iran is working on nuclear weapons, they are just a week away to build nuke, and so they're going to strike Iran again. They can come up with such claims, by the way, anytime, because they are never providing no evidences for anything, right? They never provide no evidences for any claim that they make, either in regards to Iran or in regards to any other topic. Am I correct? So maybe Trump is hinting, actually, there about next phase of escalation in the Middle East and attacks on Iran. Very much possible, I think. Very much possible. And same time, by the way, it's not just Middle East that US is a destructive force, but it's South America too, isn't it? And we have this report, for example, that Pentagon has sampled the forces to seize Venezuela's airfields and ports. This was stated by Trump, allegedly, according to some media reports. Southcom posts Marines live fire of Caracas coast and hexed what you are doing. Iran is not training. What the heck RT is writing here? This is from RT, by the way. Sometimes they do write some stuff that are difficult to understand what they freaking mean. But anyways, main topic here is that allegedly, according to RT, Trump has said that they have assembled, capable enough force now to seize Venezuelan airfields and their ports. I have not seen such statements of Trump, at least video of it, but maybe he said something like that. Who knows, right? Also, when it comes to Venezuela, allegedly, Trump hinted at the new phase of U.S. operations after strikes of Venezuela. Next, will hunt them on the land. He was talking about these alleged narco cartels that are running boats around. He went to say that boats are difficult to spot now because even fishermen are no longer going out of the sea. Everyone is afraid. Understandably so, by the way. U.S. military just are executing people on the boats with no order, with no due process, with no anything, right? With no evidences that these people do any wrong. And Trump is hinting now on the land strikes. This was inevitable, by the way. Of course, we all understand that the strike force that was assembled by U.S. of course of Venezuela is there not for some tourist mission. Excuse me. Of course, at one point they're going to launch decapitation strike on Venezuela's government and then attempt to do regime change there and establish control over the country, recolonize basically this Bolivarian republic. But meanwhile, when it comes to these strikes on boats off coast of Venezuela, according to Washington Post, Trump already killed 21 people. All these attacks are authorized by Trump, so he already killed 21 people without any due process. So he's quite effectively mass murderer. That's what it is. He's mass murderer, right? Because he had no legal justification for these actions, none whatsoever. And many experts in U.S. Judiciary system are saying this, right? The U.S. president is in no position to authorize killing, execution of the people just because he believes those people are doing some wrong. Judiciary system is not works that way, right? So Trump is quite effectively a mass murderer now. And to this day, dear friends, no evidences was provided either by Pentagon or FBI or White House or anybody in U.S. about these 21 people that they executed on the boats. No evidences that these people had anything to do with their drug cartels. No names, no surnames, no nothing whatsoever. Those people just vanished. How crazy is that? And not surprisingly, as I mentioned yesterday during the live stream, Trump is unlikely to get the Nobel Peace Prize that he dreams about. This was reported by AP, by the way, after Obama's victory, so-called victory, when he was awarded with a Nobel Peace Prize for nothing, by the way, and after which Nobel Committee lost any credibility, and no one really, I guess very few people really care about what Nobel Committee does no more. But nevertheless, after Obama's story, the Nobel Committee now rewards durable peace, international cooperation, and institutional work, for international cooperation and institutional work. And these are areas where Trump's record may actually work against him. For example, because he's executing people without due process. I mean, he already killed 21 people, by the way, on those boats. And no one can tell us even who those people were. And to give Trump a Nobel Peace Prize, that will finally decimate, if there is anything left from the reputation of the Nobel Committee. I have no respect for them anyways, right? After they awarded their Peace Prize to Obama, I have no respect to this organization, man. Fuck him all, right? I mean, literally. I mean, disgusting freaking creatures. Scum of humanity. But nevertheless, maybe some people still has some respect for Nobel Committee, and probably they will lose this respect straight away if Trump is awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize. Rightfully so, by the way, because it's a joke, man. What Nobel Committee, man? They give a Peace Prize to Obama for what exactly? Can anybody explain why Obama get the Nobel Peace Prize? What he achieved, by the way, in terms of peace? He was killing people, civilians left and right with the drone strikes. He killed more people with these drone strikes than Bush did, by the way. Can you imagine that? And this mass murderer, Obama, was awarded the Peace Prize, man. Which is crazy. Anyways, dear friends, another reason why Trump may not get a Nobel Peace Prize, and probably will not get it, is that Trump is deploying army into American cities, and many are arguing that he has no authority to do so. He has no authority to do so, but he does it anyways. And we have this report from RIA Novosti that Trump ordered the deployment of 400 National Guard troops from Texas to several other states. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered the deployment of 400 Texas National Guard troops to several U.S. states. For example, this was reported by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. This evening, President Trump ordered, this is quote, by the way, ordered the deployment of 400 Texas National Guard troops to Illinois, Oregon, and other areas of the United States. He wrote, Pritzker said no one had coordinated this decision with him. He called the situation an invasion and called on the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, not to support the White House's initiative. So something strange is happening in U.S., by the way, clearly. I mean, some might argue that coup d'etat is taking place, and coup d'etat is led by Trump himself and his inner circle, because they are kind of overwriting rules of conduct between federal government and local governments, right? And he's not consulting nobody from local authorities, just sends troops anywhere he wants. Okay, by the way, it's yet again, I'm not an expert in U.S. judiciary system. It's up to Americans anyways, right, to deal with all this situation. But it is a strange stuff that is happening in U.S. for sure, when clearly there is a serious conflict between local authorities in many states, usually run by Democrats, and between federal government. And who knows, by the way, more and more people are talking about civil war in U.S. and hopefully it will not happen. No one should be in support of internal confrontation in the U.S., because after all, that will hurt ordinary people, first of all, and secondly, U.S. is a nuclear superpower, and you don't want instability in a nuclear superpower, right? But yet again, many people from U.S. itself, by the way, including from alternative media, are beginning to talk openly about risks of civil war, which is dangerous stuff, man. Something that definitely worth our attention. RIA Novosti is also reporting that U.S. government shutdown could last for at least 4 weeks, which is kind of unprecedented stuff that is happening also. And of course, this government shutdown not gonna help to resolve whatever internal issues U.S. political class and society is facing, but that's the reality there. Also, dear friends, RIA Novosti is reporting about recent unrest in Georgia, and Georgian Prime Minister blamed EU ambassador for the unrest in Tbilisi when Western controlled, basically, rioters tried to enter presidential administration, and it was clearly attempt of the coup d'etat. By the way, they just failed, right? They just failed, and Irakli Kobakhidze, Georgian Prime Minister, did not hesitate to blame unrest directly to EU representative into a country. We have quote here. You know that some people from abroad have even expressed direct support for the attempt to overthrow the constitutional order, including the EU representative. Against this backdrop, the EU ambassador to Georgia bears special responsibility, show goodwill, come out, share, and strongly condemn everything that is happening on the streets of Tbilisi. This is his direct responsibility, given that we have seen and heard statements supporting the attempt to overthrow their constitutional order. Let's see what their reaction will be, he said at the briefing, while calling to EU representative, basically EU ambassador, to come out and condemn criminal actions of these Western-controlled rioters. But he didn't, at least for now. Nothing like that had happened. Also, by the way, Speaker of Georgian Parliament called on the EU to apologize. Of course, they're not going to apologize, by the way, but nevertheless, Georgian society wants to hear an apology from the European Union for supporting the attempt to overthrow the government, said Georgian Parliament Speaker Shalva Papuashvili. A joint statement by European Union Foreign Minister Kaja Kallas and European Commissioner Marta Kos called on the parties in Georgia to renounce violence and condemn the disinformation about the EU role in this event. RIA Novosti reports, we have quote here, if I understand correctly, MS Kallas and MS Kos are not apologizing for their press speaker's support for the rally to overthrow the government, which resulted in 25 police officers being injured during the attack on the Georgian president's palace. And this is what Georgian society expects from the European Union today, Papuashvili said. The speaker also called on the EU representatives to refrain from spreading false information about the Georgian elections and misleading the public. He believes such a rhetoric only fuels radical forces' efforts to undermine democracy, the rule of law, and the respect for human rights in their country. I mean, strong statements, yes, but very little strong actions. At this point, I guess very few people, if any, understands why these Western-controlled elements are still allowed to run around Georgia and constantly attempt this destabilization of the country and constantly try to prepare ground for regime change. This Western asset should be, already being, trialed as for treason and put in prison, but this is not being done. And my personal explanation is that Georgian Dream Party, ruling party in Georgia, is hesitant to actually deal with these foreign assets because they are, politically speaking, in a very comfortable position, because as long as these Western-controlled elements are being designated to be main opposition in Georgia, well, Georgian Dream Party gonna win every single election, right? Because Georgian society will never, ever support in terms of its majority representatives of the former regime of Saakashvili, right? That was a horrible phenomenon for Georgia, tragic phenomenon for Georgia, right? So as long as ruling party maintains these criminals in place, by the way, as long as ruling party in Georgia, Georgian Dream, allows these Western controlled assets to be active, they're gonna win every elections, as they did last Sunday during these local elections. They won everywhere, right? Because, as I said, majority of people, due to lack of choice, are supporting Georgian Dream, because in no circumstances majority will ever support these criminal groups that are affiliated with the regime of Saakashvili, right? That was also controlled by the West, as these groups that are destabilizing Georgia are. Maybe that's what is going on, and this is, of course, if true, by the way, if this is the calculus of Georgian Dream, and that's why they are not actually dealing with these foreign assets, then this is extremely dangerous game, because they are messing around with the Western secret services, with the Western elites, by the way. And Western elites, if they know anything, they know how to deal with their countries, how to sacrifice entire countries, how to sacrifice entire populations, right? And I mean, maybe the Georgian Dream Party is getting delusional. They managed to avoid regime change 5 times, and maybe they are just too confident, and they are losing their understanding with whom they are dealing. It's a Western secret services, by the way. It's Western elites that can sacrifice all of Georgia, everybody, literally everybody in Georgia, without her hesitating, even for a second. And they do have a means to achieve regime change if the final decision is made in the West, right? So better Georgian Dream began acting a little more adequately, right, and neutralizing these foreign assets in a country. Maybe some process will begin. Because reports from Georgia are more and more dangerous, by the way, for local security. Because, for example, number of media outlets, and Telegram channels reported that State Security Service of Georgia seized a large quantity of weapons and explosives with their detonators intended for sabotage in Tbilisi on October 4th, during that attempt to break into presidential palace. Georgian citizen acquired them under the instructions of a member of one of their military formations active in Ukraine. This is Georgian Legion, so-called, by the way. Reports are that Georgian Legion formation, which is operating under the umbrella of Main Intelligence Directorate of Kyiv regime, which on its own operates under the umbrella of CIA and MI6. Reports are that this Georgian Legion is actively engaged in these provocations against the current leadership of Georgia, and they are providing all sorts of assistance to these rioters, right, to these Western-controlled elements, including manpower. And as I said, by the way, Western has not yet made decision to actually push for a final push to overthrow the government in Georgia. What we have seen in the past several years, including a few days ago, is just their preparations to overthrow the regime. And that's why I'm saying Georgian Dream ruling party in Georgia is getting too confident, maybe, right? And they are risking big time, because they are dealing with Western elites, by the way, that are capable of anything, literally, right? Any atrocity. And they have enough means, including this, for example, foreign legion in Ukraine that can be transferred to Georgia to conduct to participate in military operations against the government there, right? To conduct terrorist attacks, to seize the buildings, and to attack security services, and so on. So once final decision is made by the West, by Western elites, to overthrow current government, I'm afraid they will have enough means to be successful, right? If Georgian Dream will not act now and not neutralizes these Western assets. So security service in Georgia neutralized the individuals who were supposed to deliver the weapons and explosives to the central part of Tbilisi. All of this was hidden in a forest. All these weapons and explosives were hidden in a forest near the capital. One person has been declared wanted during the search of his residence. A phone was found containing an action plan and there other evidences. So clearly there was a, even though I think this was just a preparation, preparation of the ground for a final push that might happen during the next parliamentary election or after, right, in Georgia. Nevertheless, clearly there was plans to do larger scale provocations than we observed. And security forces did manage to prevent extreme violence, right? But how long they're going to be this lucky, man? That's the question, right? And also maybe on the topic of ruling party in Georgia beginning to realize that they are playing very dangerous games. We have this report that 5 opposition figures, so-called opposition figures, let's say, by the way, these are criminals, these are not politicians. So 5 so-called opposition figures in Georgia have been accused of calling for a coup. Georgian prosecutor's office has formally charged 5 opposition figures with calling for a coup d'etat and the overthrow of the government on the day of local elections on October 4th. The office said in a statement, charges have been brought against the Pater Burchuladze, former opera singer, by the way, world famous opera singer turned so-called politician. And I reported you friends yesterday during the live stream that audio is circulating in Georgia now. That was initially shared with one of the TV channels on which Pater Burchuladze, the so-called politician, is talking to another criminal, former defense minister of Georgia, Bachu Akhalaya, that was. And in that conversation, these criminals are discussing killing people. They are discussing openly that people gonna die on the side of police, on the side of Protestants, and that will blow the situation and they will gain some momentum. They were basically describing exactly what happened during the Maidan in 2014 in Kiev, when snipers that were operating under the umbrella of CIA, of course, and the reports are that snipers from Georgian Legion were used for this operation. Those snipers opened fire on police officers and also on the protesters. More than 100 people, civilians, were killed there, and also number of police officers. And then this tragedy was used as a justification for final phase of coup d'etat to overthrow Yanukovych's government, as if Yanukovych gave order to open fire, which was a false information, of course. Now everyone knows that this was a CIA operation from the beginning to the end, right? Including the sniper fire. So Burchuladze and Akhalaya was discussing similar scenario to take place in Georgia, right? That's how dangerous these criminals are, by the way. And they should be in prison for a life, right? Also, charges were brought against Murtaz Zodelava, Irakli Nadiradze, Pater Manjgaladze, and Lasha Beridze. Murtaz Zodelava was a former mayor of Tbilisi, if I remember correctly. Pater Burchuladze was a opera singer at one point. When it comes to other ones, Irakli Nadiradze, Pater Manjgaladze, and Lasha Beridze, I don't really know these people. Maybe I cannot remember. It's so long now, isn't it, since I left Georgia. But anyways, by the way, this is the situation. At least some steps being taken to neutralize leadership of these Western-controlled terrorist organizations, by the way, that pretend to be political parties, media, NGO, and so on. These all are terrorist organizations. That's how it is. Western financed and Western controlled terrorist organizations. And they should be classified as such, right? And dealt as a terrorists. Anyways, dear friends, one more news, and I will end this news segment on that. Good news is coming from India that New Delhi has started negotiations with Russia to purchase 5 additional batches of S-400 surface-to-air missile systems. This was reported by Hindustan Times, citing sources. The deal is expected to be finalized before Putin's visit to India in December. And so, yes, great news, by the way. India clearly is happy with the work of S-400s during the recent escalation between India and Pakistan. And Indian side now wants to purchase 5 more batteries of S-400s. That will make Indian airspace one of the most protected in the world, I guess, because yet again, S-400s are most capable air defense systems in this world. Only air defense system that can be considered to be better is S-500, which is also a Russian system, right? So S-400 is clearly on top of the game right now. No one even close. US made THAAD and their Patriots, and it's just a freaking low-level engineering, by the way. This THAAD and Patriots compared to S-400, there are some low-level engineering garbage. That's how big difference is between S-400 and S-500 and whatever West can produce, by the way, US or Europe or whatever, right? Good news here, good news. Hopefully, deal will be finalized before Russian president will visit India. And yet again, of course, 5 new batteries of S-400s will make Indian air most protected, probably one of the most protected ones in this world. So good news there, and I'm gonna end this live stream on that, dear friends. Oh, not the live stream, pre-recorded video, dear friends. Pre-recorded video. Live stream will be with the main news update will be at 10 p.m. this evening on simultaneously on my YouTube and Rumble channels. And when it comes to this pre-recorded news update, initially, as I already said, I will publish this video on Patreon page of mine and also on the Boosty page. And after several hours, I will about for 3 p.m. let's say, I will publish this video on YouTube and Rumble also. And dear friends, if you like the video, if you find this news segment informative and useful, please click that like button, leave some commentary. This might help to deal with the algorithm. Share this video. And if you want to support my work, dear friends, you can do it through several means, PayPal, Boosty, Patreon. All the links are on this video description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a wonderful day, and I hope you will manage to join a live stream this evening with the main news update at 10 p.m. Moscow time, dear friends. Take care.